Do you feel like an imposter as a financial brand or a fintech leader? Or maybe you're struggling with imposter syndrome right now, right this very moment. Well, if you are, I've got some great news for you. Number one, you're not alone. And then number two, we're going to discuss this very subject on today's episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
You're listening to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Welcome back to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. I'm James Robert Lay, founder and CEO of the Digital Growth Institute, where we are on a mission to help financial brands stop losing loans and deposits in less than 30 days because of unseen gaps in their marketing and sales systems. And the way that we do this is by guiding financial brands, guiding their teams, their marketing teams, their sales teams, and leadership teams through the Digital Growth Program, which is comprised of three simple steps. Step number one is we secret shop your website. Step number two is you get your digital growth blueprint. And then step number three is we build your digital growth engine together. And if you are on a digital growth journey and would like some objective perspective, someone to come in and guide you along that journey, give me a text, 415-579-3002. Text me and let me know how we might be able to help you along that journey, because this is why we do what we do. This is why I host this podcast, because I really enjoy helping other leaders level up to achieve growth. And as a result, those leaders can help others unlock new growth as well, which is exactly what we're talking about on today's episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. Joining me for this conversation is Mike Kelly. Mike is the president and CEO of Team On Up. He's also the author of a brand new book, Meaning is the Mission. It's this idea of meaning. Meaning gives us purpose. Meaning gives us focus. Meaning gives us direction to keep creating, to keep co-creating an even bigger and better, brighter future together. And through the context of financial services, working together to guide people beyond financial stress that's taking a toll on their family, their friends, us as individuals. Maybe it's even you, people that you're working with within your financial brand, the financial stress, considering the fact that 85% of all people in the United States, 80 to 85%, are struggling with some level of financial stress and anxiety. And when we think about this silent epidemic of financial stress and how that financial stress can take a toll on people's relationships, on their physical health, on their mental health and well-being, there's a tremendous opportunity now to re-examine why we do what we do as a financial brand, because it's meaning that can give us purpose. It is meaning that can provide a path forward. Meaning, as we'll talk about today, is the mission. Welcome to the show, Mike. It is great to share time with you today, buddy.
Thank you, sir. It's so good to be here.
It is so good for you to be here. And before we get into talking about your new book, Meaning is the Mission, which I love the title. I love alliteration. What has been going well for you personally or professionally? It is your pick to get started on a positive note.
What is going well for me is that on Sunday of this coming week, I'm going out of office. I'm going off grid through Wednesday, and I'm going to be in a study session with one of my favorite authors, this guy, N.T. Wright, Tom Wright. And I'm going with two of my buddies, and we're going to go deep, and I cannot wait to go.
I mean, we're talking, you're an author, I'm an author, you're going to go study with an author. What are his books and what are you studying?
He is a biblical historian type of guy, and he's written 65 books, so he's quite prolific. I've heard him teach a couple of times, and this time he's going to teach on the letter to the Ephesians in the Bible.
Uh-huh.
And it's 4 days. So start Sunday night, 2 sessions on Monday, 2 sessions on Tuesday, and then a Wednesday session.
Wow.
And there'll be like 500 people there. And it is a phenomenal communicator. Written word, speaking, he's the best.
I love that. And it's this idea of communication. And you think about even like the idea of mission being the meaning here through what you'll be going through, thinking about the letters to the Ephesians. Come back to the book, your book. Why this book? Why now? Why write it? What was the meaning behind your mission of writing it?
I wrote the book because it occurred to me that we are spending more money than ever to make work better, and it's getting worse. And it's weird.
It is weird.
You know, you kind of ask yourself, I get to serve credit unions. I have a neat little mission management business. And so I'm deep in the muck and the mud with them. And it's worse. Employee scores are down. Member satisfaction scores are down. The industry's collapsing, and you're kind of looking around like, what are we doing? And I hear the permutations of it everywhere.
Mm.
And so that's been on my mind. It's the problem I'm trying to solve. And I just started to think about and write and talk with my clients about, I feel like we're solving symptoms instead of root cause.
Yeah.
And we might be getting the right answers to the wrong questions. And that hits hard in with the CEOs I get to serve. And so it just occurred to me, there's something here. And then my friend Pam wrote a book. I just had coffee with her this past Friday. She wrote a book. And what it helped her get clear on for her company and what it helped the company do. I was like, oh my God, what am I waiting around for? I'm going to go write a book. And so I did it. And here we are. I get to be on a podcast with you talking about my book.
What's deeper than that? Because I think you're onto something. And I love the way that you framed the problem, you positioned the problem, you positioned the pain. And I mean, even just, thinking about the back cover, you wrote, why are we spending more money than ever to make work better, only to see it get worse? Billions of dollars and countless time is spent each year to improve the employee and customer experience. And yet each year surveys show that we're more miserable than ever. And then the way that you frame this, you continue and you write, with all this in mind, it begs the question, is the way we work working?
Right.
And I'm so glad we're just stopping to pause on this. It's an important point to pause. And unless we pause, the future will become the predictable past based upon the decisions that we're making right here in the present moment. So I want to go into the book, but before there, I want to go into you a little bit. So that those who are watching and listening can have a little bit more context into just the meaning behind the mission that you're doing over at Team On Up. What is inspiring that work there?
The business I run, we're trying to break open a new category called mission management. It's us and the clients we get to serve really know this phrase. But again, it was occurring to me of nobody's managing the mission. Having been a CEO, so I had the opportunity to be CEO at PSCU, now Valera. They just merged with Co-op and came out with a new brand. I was there for 4 years. We had 1,700 staff. It was an amazing opportunity. And it was really hard to do it and to try and invite everyone to get on the same page. And so some of that learning and the pain and the agony and the joy and the hope that came with it are kind of percolating under that. And so what we're trying to do is teach a point of view on how to manage the mission. And I work right with the CEO. If I can't serve the CEO, we were being phony baloney. So I just don't go in because CEO has to set the standard of success. And so I serve only credit unions. I really like the smaller credit unions, 750 million in assets and below. And the simple thing is, how are you running your mission? How are you managing it from vision down to tasks and inviting your whole team to move towards a mission that matters? And I started with software. But I quickly realized, oops, not everybody had the training that I got. I'm a graduate of Fiserv. I'm an alumni of Fiserv. And then at PSU, these bigger companies, some of these smalls, they don't get that kind of training. So I was like, oh, we can teach this. So it's just a simple point of view on teach, a point of view on how to run your business, do the goals that go with your role, put that in a simple system, and turn the people you get to serve into authors so that you can be editor.
Mm.
That's it. We just keep it simple. And we call that mission management. So we call it a mission boss, a business operating system for success.
Yeah.
So it's teaching and tools on how to go do it.
Well, I appreciate the perspective because there's a lot of context through your experience. And I think, like you said, you started thinking about technology, but then you realized that not everyone had the same experience that you had. I think about the work that we do around digital growth. Technology is just one part of the equation. In fact, it's secondary. And to your point, are we treating the symptom or are we diving deeper into the root cause?
Symptom.
And staying
James Robert, symptoms.
exactly.
Yeah.
And staying on just track with you for a moment, thinking about the idea of meaning and mission. You're very clear on what your mission is, as an individual, as a leader. How, if at all, has your meaning and mission transformed over time, or have you been on a path and because of a mission you keep moving down that path with greater resolve and greater clarity?
Great question. I was talking about this morning. I share this in the book. When I was surprised I was going to be considered to become CEO. I was delighted to be in the process. The closer I got to being placed as CEO, the more I thought, wow, I could really help this company. As soon as I got the job, I was like, oh gosh, how soon before someone figures out I have no idea what I'm doing? Monstrous amount of imposter syndrome, which I go into quite a bit in the book. And what's deepened for me is at the end of that time, we had great results. We invited people into something that was we made great mistakes. We had fun. All the things were going up and to the right. And that was the definition of success. And at work, you need results. That is what success looks like. But my maturity wasn't where it needed to be. And looking back, I can see where I was too focused on things that mattered to me. So my proportion was out of whack, mostly based on fear. So I was trapped by imposter syndrome in a way that I had a blind spot I couldn't see. And I wasn't mature enough to deal with lots of new scenarios. So I had some new versions of crazy, right? Once you get past the easy stuff, you go to next level. And I just wasn't ready for it. I had blind spot. And so what has turned the corner for me is the ability to connect my gut and head. What I'm calling in this book is heart set first. I've come to understand that our deepest thinking and deepest feeling is in our hearts.
Yes.
Language always isn't in there, but you know these things to be true. Like just, why do you love your wife? Why do you love your children? You give me beautiful words, but you're still like, that's unsatisfactory. I can't get you all the way there, but you know it, right? It's in your bones and in your bloodstream. And so heart set to feed mindset. We've talking about mindset all the time. I've yet to hear anyone admit to having a fixed mindset. So I just think we're lying to ourselves about that. And then when we think about skill sets, it's mostly technical skills. And friends, the robots are coming for us. So, we're not talking at all about power skills. Like, have you ever seen wisdom on a resume? No. But who do you want to work for? Please let me work for the wise leader who's going to try to do right by me and send us off in a good direction. And so the maturity, what's turned the corner for me is I'm super interested in being in position to be helpful, to be a thinking partner. I have seen a lot of the movie that the CEOs I get to serve are facing. And now to be in the muddy relationship stuff has been super fun. And I really recognized that over the last 6 months of my willingness to go further And James, I think also as we've become more fearful of one another in society, like more polite, more short, more terse, more removed, we're stopping asking that second and third and fourth question. And just when you do that, people don't have to answer you, but when you do that, and then they're like, oh, I asked one of the CEOs I get to serve, he was day 10 on his CEO job. And I was like, hey, how's your imposter syndrome? And he made like the craziest sound. He was like, oh, and I was laughing. And I'm like, what's the matter? He's like, why are you talking about it? I don't want to talk about it. Of course, he did want to talk about it. And I'm like, yeah, it's real. Let's talk about it,
Yeah.
And so that the enjoyment of trying to get all the puzzle pieces out on the table. Some of them are still in the box, and stitching it together has been a total blast.
So much to unpack right there. And I appreciate where you're helping to lead this discussion, because you mentioned imposter syndrome. You mentioned the heart head connection, heart set. I want to start with heart set and then come back to imposter syndrome. When I think about heart set, and one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is the employee experience, and how an employee experience will lead to a positive human experience that can then be multiplied by a digital experience. To your point, this idea of tech and AI and automation, etc. I'm starting to observe that maybe, just maybe, the pendulum is going to swing back to team humanity. And you're talking to, like, I've been studying digital for 21 years at this point.
I have a software company. Yeah, I know, but I'm with you.
And so, however, one of the roadblocks that I do see, and even with in banking on change, I think to formulas, models, and frameworks, EQ plus AQ is going to be greater than IQ in the age of AI. And we know EQ is emotional intelligence. Not a lot of people are familiar with AQ just yet, but it's your adaptability quotient. And EQ and AQ are similar in the fact that you can benchmark them, you can coach to them, and you can, just like go to the gym and work out and build muscle, you can build these muscles as well. But on the EQ side, and I do see this within financial brands, credit unions, community banks, the same. Why might there be leaders who are not ready to lean into the EQ piece of this, first and foremost for themselves, to your point of the CEO? Like, no, let's have this conversation. And I'm right there with you to facilitate it. But what is the impediment to leaning into that? Because I think you have to address your own EQ first before you can think about how to bring this to others within your team and then throughout the organization.
Okay, so the question is, what's preventing leaders?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, blind spots.
Mm.
Because if you are working hard to ignore the fact that you don't want to know, I'm probably not going to be the one to break through. I am trying so hard to find out early if you're up for their journey or not. Because when somebody's in for their journey, I'm like, oh my gosh, it barely feels like work. Now we get to make great money and we solve really good, juicy balance sheet problems. And I'm measuring success out of the balance sheet with the CEO, and I don't move a muscle before we agree. Okay, 10% productivity equals $1.1 million of productivity in year. Because it needs to work. There needs to be more money so you can run more mission. But there's a couple of roadblocks in the way and these blind spots. And that's what I'm referring in my own journey. I had a blind spot, and it was based on fear. And it's a fear of not being enough. James Robert Lay, when did we lose the plot on the joy of learning new things and replaced it with the fear of being found out? And so the CEO role, weirdly, and I think you'll find a lot of CEOs, you can become CEO because you've got a big engine, you're smart enough, you're probably building self-worth based on results, makes you feel good, and you're And in my case, I was trying to fill a hole in my heart
Yeah.
that I was working really hard to ignore that was there with results. And in corporate America, that wins, that plays. And you're a beautiful human being in corporate America if you can go create results and you're a forgiveness, not permission kind of person. There's a little bit of, and I think in particular for guys, there's a little bit of rage and anger that seethes under there,
Mhm.
and that turns into a blind spot. I think it's built on a lie,
Mm.
but the lie is embarrassing enough and in there long enough where you can't even see it anymore. It's a blind spot because it's become true for you.
Yeah.
And so when I talk to CEOs, I have a couple of questions that if they won't even do little things, I'm like, okay, you'll hate what we're doing if you can't even answer these kind of questions. And so, I work very hard to make sure that you're ready for it because it takes work.
Well, I think the way you frame this in the book is important because you have these two blind spot mirrors. Why the analogy for the mirrors here?
Yeah, it's one of the exercises. Like, how do you know this is all true? How do you know? I think I could have done a better job in the book talking about imposter syndrome in terms of you're really trying to look for the pattern,
Hmm.
not the moments. We all fall prey to the moments. And now that I'm so aware of this and the people I get to serve are so aware of this, you have these, oh gosh, am I being an imposter? And I think that's positive. You're looking for the pattern. But the blind spots you can sooner see in somebody else, and the exercise is who's the person in your mind's eye right now that makes your teeth itch? That just drives you crazy. They put you on an 11 on a 10 scale right away. That person probably, now it's not definitive, but probably shows you something that you secretly hate about yourself, and you just work hard to ignore that it's the thing that you hate about yourself, and you're frustrated.
The mirror principle.
And it's easier to see the mirror than to look at yourself and be like, what is my problem?
Yeah.
And now that blind spot has been broken, I can see that a mile away now, and it makes me so relaxed. I'm like, okay, yeah, another one of these. Okay, cool. It's not my problem. That's that guy's problem, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, when you start to observe people come into your life for a reason or for a season, they're there to show you something many times that you're not able to observe or see yourself. And it's kind of like you're in the bottle. And that's where I think with the work that you're doing and the work that I'm doing is we're just helping people to just take a walk around, see the label, look at things just a little bit differently. Because sometimes it's just a little 1% shift, maybe. It's not a massive thing. It could be very, very micro, but the micro creates a really exponential result to the macro
Correct.
level. And I think your example tying it back to the balance sheet and productivity, I mean, it does make a tremendous amount of sense. Now, you've touched on this point a couple of times in our conversation. It's the imposter syndrome. It's the prison, the imposter prison.
Prison
Uh,
of fear. Oh,
and but you reference, because you're coming back to pattern matching. You reference there are three different types of imposter syndrome that we need to be aware of here. What are these different types? Because
I know.
once again, the symptom will show differently for different people, maybe even at different stages and different times of growth and leadership as well.
Yeah. So the three types of imposter that I see are the perfectionist, the poser, and the Ponzi. Perfectionist. I was a monstrous perfectionist. Nothing's ever good enough. You're sucking your teeth at everything. So my story, I'm 38 years old, got recruited to be CEO at POCU. Amazing. 4 years later, we've added 300 credit unions. We took free cash from 0 to 45 million. We added 120 million to top line. Our CFO was CFO of the year in Tampa Bay. Lynn Heckler, who just retired, was HR leader of the year in the state of Florida. It was like, we were doing it. And I was sucking my teeth like, yeah, I mean, it's cool, amazing. But like, we could have done 130 million. If we just got it right, we could have done 130 million. And what I learned about perfectionists is you're keeping success at a distance.
Mm.
And the results that come with it give you a little pop, little endorphin hit, because it's that self-worth you're trying to fill in.
Yep.
But some of that, you need some juice at work. Like you need a little bit of anxiety. You need a little bit of get up and go. But defining your whole self-worth on it is a disaster.
Have
So
you?
there's the perfectionist. And the thing that you got to watch out is the perfectionist can eat herself from the inside out.
Yeah.
Very productive employee, and secretly you're like, man, they get some stuff done. But there's like carnage in a lot of different places because you're addicted to work and blah, 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 blah.
Well, I want to pause you on this point on the perfectionist because it makes me think of the work that Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy did with their book, Progress Not Perfection. And,
Yep.
and you look at the importance of measuring the progress that you make on the journey. Or was it gap in the gain? The gap in the gain. It's easy to fall into the gap. And the model there, progress at perfection, progress. You fall into the gap when you measure against what you still have to do, or we could have done all of this. To your point,
Yes.
We could have been 130 to 140. You're not seeing what you went from 45 to 130 or whatever your example was. You're completely, and so it's like riding in a car. And we're going to use another mirror principle here. My kids one time, and I've tried this, and it's a fascinating. I know our kids are the similar ages, so just try this as an experiment. If you ever take them on a road trip, oh my gosh, how long is it going to take? Well, we're going to be there after the sun goes down because they had an expectation of when we're going to go, but I never gave them a time. I just said whenever the sun goes down. And then they said, well, can we watch a movie? And I said, well, you know what? I just want you to just do what we did back in the day, stare out the window and ponder life and have some conversations. And they said, I said, we could watch a movie, whenever the sun goes down. Not once on that trip did they ever ask, are we there yet? Or how much longer? They were able to measure progress by just the context of time and literally watching the sun. And so once we rolled into the place where we were staying, the Airbnb, guess what? Sun was just going down and we watched the movie once we got inside.
Right. I love that.
So they were able to measure progress on the trip with some sort of horizon line, not looking at where we were going, but by kind of measuring where we had come from. Same idea here with the perfectionist. So you get the perfectionist, then what's the next one?
Yeah, and by the way, what I try to land the plane with perfectionism is facts need feelings. Because perfectionists will say, which is trending towards psychopathy, is, well, let's take all the emotion out of this. Let's just measure reality. And I'm like, oh Lord, here we go. So you're a human being. You have feelings. Use them.
Yeah.
Add in some data to help you see the picture. So in our model, we wrote scorecarding software. It's now automated so that everybody on the staff understands that the current state progress towards success. And that smooths everything out of like big picture snapshot, big picture snapshot. So facts need feelings is one thing we're always talking about. Poser.
I appreciate that. Yeah, let's go to the poser.
Poser is also keeping success at bay, but they never want the scorecard to come in. Poser sounds amazing. You sit in a meeting with a poser, you're like, man, we might solve world hunger in this single meeting. Right? We're doing it. And then you come back to the next meeting and you think, well, wait a minute, what? I don't even feel like we ate dinner. What happened? Not enough happened. And there's levels of excuse making and pushing accountability. There's always some reason. And then you come back, they're usually very clever, they're nice and, comfortable to be around, but just not enough happens with the poser. So there's a walk and a talk issue with the poser that's doing effectively the same thing. Something's gone wrong for this person in terms of judgment and scorecards, and they just do not want the accountability because, again, they've fallen for the head fake of a lie that has become true for them. And, there's self-worth wrapped up in there. So perfectionist and poser both keeping success at bay. And then the Ponzi, now you got to watch out for the Ponzi. James, because it is a psychopath. And, there's a lot of Ponzi's in the middle of the organization, but this Ponzi is moving the goalposts, as we say in corporate America, always changing the definition of success.
Yeah.
And they have almost an elite ability to figure out if you're a perfectionist or your opposer, and to like turn that wrench on you to manipulate you for their own self-aggrandizement. So when you start to really see that, wow, this person is out for themselves more than would be appropriate at work, your flag should go up and start to realize, oh gosh, this Ponzi is gonna, willing to, and as soon as they figure out that that they're a Ponzi, then it's battle time.
Yeah.
And that person there's not a lot of them, which is the good news, but the Ponzi could go from a hip shooter, they're just kind of moving and grooving and doing their thing, but put them in a position of power, and that is a loose cannon. And you get hit with one of those cannonballs, and you better watch out. So those are the 3 treatments.
Well, I think you've touched on this idea of success, and we've also talked about fear. And I look at I call them the 4 fears that hold leaders back from achieving and unlocking new growth. It's fear of the unknown, it's fear of change, it's fear of failure. And then there's this 4th one that I really appreciate the way that you're framing this. I look at it as the fear of success.
Yes.
And I'll be the first one to admit, like, I think that's the one that I probably struggle with the most. And I'm doing a lot of work and a lot of shadow work on that right now to try to get past some blocks, because I know that they're there. I have the awareness, but then I also have some coaches and some coaching programs that I'm involved in because I want to keep leveling up. It's almost like I see there's something I can be even better, but I also have to do some of this work right here. And in chapter 3, you talk about these symptoms of success. What are the symptoms of success that we as leaders need to be aware of that could in reality be impediments and roadblocks that prevent us from moving forward?
Yeah. So there's something going great at every company. What are you good at? And with all this imposter and perfectionism, all that big muddle, you got to break out of that. I'm calling it a prison of fear. So you got to be aware of that and work hard to get out of it. And when the cash and prizes start to roll in, I have the same challenge of my business is doing great. Like, oh Lord, help me stay the path here and realize, I get to be great at work, and I get to have fun, and I get to meet cool people, and I get to have the joy of learning.
Yeah.
So there's an awareness that I'm hoping to contribute to the conversation of, once you see it, you can't unsee it, kind of a deal. And then you can figure out, okay, now that I have a better feel for who God made me to be, now I need to understand, what are my strengths? What are my symptoms of success? So I'm trying to play with the imposter syndrome. You don't have a syndrome. You're not a fraud. Okay. You're a human being. You're here on this playing field for a reason. Just stop it. Now get your heart set, mindset, and skill sets organized in that order so that you can figure out what's going well in your life, what's working and what's not. So these symptoms of success, I'm simply trying to say, and in particular for the industry I serve, who is very conflict avoidant. I mean, they're like unnaturally conflict avoidant and very fearful, which are probably connected. They're saying, hey, what's going well? What are you guys great at? And that can't be 5 things, and it needs to be specific enough that one of my credit unions really does a good job with teachers. And they're running off and doing commercial real estate and all these other things. And it's like, that's not our jam. That's not who you guys love. It's not what you're doing. Just come back. There's a million teachers here. There's a million people who are connected to teachers. Just stay on the teachers. And we drift off, and instead, hey, this is what we really do well. Let's build on that foundation of strength. And so if the human being doesn't recognize, and I go through this whole routine of, and this is kind of unpacking the imposter syndrome, what's the number one compliment you receive? Typically, a perfectionist can't answer that question. What's the critique of yourself? Where are your gaps? The perfectionist would be like, oh, how long do you have? I'm the worst. I have a laundry list of crap that's wrong with me. Also a parody. And then we have to do that for the company too. So I think it's actually the same thing. I just try to keep it simple. The symptoms of success, what's working at the company level. It has a role and it has goals. That should be in vision, mission, values, balance sheet, budget, scorecards, and for each one of us, the first team and then the individuals in all the departments.
I want to loop back to something that you have surfaced, this idea of conflict aversion. You see it through the work that you do, and then you couple that with the idea of fear and perhaps even avoidance. I see that as well. And actually, Audrey and I just, we recorded a podcast earlier on the subject of, you go to a conference, you get fired up, you're seeing things from a different perspective, and you got to come back and you got all of this positive energy, but then you're sharing that, and that what you perceive as something very good is actually very overwhelming for someone else who doesn't have the same perspective that you have. And so then it's like, where's this idea, and you're seeing it might even be over indexed here. How is that showing up? And maybe what's your hypothesis as to how have we got to this place? Why do we see this pattern in this particular vertical?
Conflict avoidance.
Yep.
Conflict management. That's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah. One, performance management systems stink, especially in credit unions. We didn't work hard enough to claim what success is, how many members, how many loans, how many deposits, is somebody getting richer and is somebody getting fired. That conversation in the right time period, appropriately, like that conversation needs to happen. And if you want people to really create a new company of your vision, and you're going to give them a 15% bonus on a $75,000 salary, you're hallucinating. It's like, that's not going to work. For the person who could do it, the cash and prizes need to be there for them. And you don't have to pay them $200,000 base, but you have to let them see, I'm going to get to do great work. I'm going to use my skills. My voice is going to be contributed here. So conflict management, then, we didn't say what success looks like. Therefore, we're left more with our feelings than not. And I'm trying to cram those down anyway. So I just don't have it in me then to deal in, well, I thought we were going to go at 200 members and we're at 75 members. What do you think that is? So at a minimum at work, there's performance management has not named success. And then two, in society and after the pandemic, and maybe before the pandemic, some of this was uncovered. James Robert Lay, I was on a plane like 6 weeks ago, and a lady walks in with the NCUA shirt on. It's got her badge on. And I said to my teammate, I was like, Elliot, don't say a word. The NCUA is here. And she was like, the plane was empty. And she was like, I'm sitting right next to you for the whole ride. She sat in the middle seat. The whole plane's empty. And I was like, you are a psychopath. You took the middle seat while the rest of the... And she's like, yeah, I knew you were going to pick on me. So here we are. We had a blast together. And so this conflict management, she turned to the woman to her right. First time I've ever heard this. The only time I've ever heard this. And she said, can I ask you, why are you wearing the lady had a mask on. She goes, why are you wearing a mask? And I was like, oh. I was locked in. I was like, oh, this is fascinating. Lady was lovely. She said, I have a little cold. And my new friend said, okay, I just want to be sensitive where I'd like to talk to you if you want to talk to me, but I want to make sure I want to keep my head looking forward. If you're worried about me, I don't want to get in your space. I just want to look ahead. Now, I would tell you, based on what I've learned, we're all hallucinating with what happens on a plane and these masks and all that. But that she went for it, that the other lady engaged. I was like, all right, look at us, all these human beings being real with one another in tight quarters in a really stressful environment.
Yeah.
And yet that is more rare now than ever, is what I was talking about before. We're just not asking each other the next question because it's not really my business. I kind of want to be looking at my phone anyway. My phone's not in my office right now because I want to be paying attention to you. I have no alerts on. So there's a couple of things that are getting in our way. Naturally, we don't want to be there. At work, we have not defined success. And then a bunch of stuff is compounded here where you're like, screw it. It's not worth the effort.
No, that's a great
My
story.
thesis. What do you think?
I'm really connecting and resonating with it. And like the anecdote of the plane to just lean into.
Wasn't that fascinating?
Yes. And I think because we need more dialogue, we need more discussion, we need more discourse, because that's how we begin to understand and look at things very objectively. Because there's the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And one of the things that is the second agreement: don't take things personally. We're all walking around with these movies going on in our minds. And it's like you're playing a movie and I'm playing a movie. And like, I don't know how you're perceiving me. I perceive myself one way. And then it's like, it creates all of this complexity. But a lot of times, if we can just like step out of ourselves and just get really curious about other people, and just ask questions, it's amazing at what can open up a dialogue and what you can learn, and how that someone else's perspective. And I think in the age of AI, when you've got large language models that are being trained upon what is out there already, the greatest potential for our growth is going to be leaning into these conversations even that much more, because your experience and my experience are unique experiences. But when we're coming together and we're doing what we're doing right now, we're having a shared experience, and that we're going to be walking away. You can't get that out of a GPT model or a large language model. The only way you can do it is by doing this.
Correct. Yeah, I totally agree. So what I'm talking about with my team and my inner circle of friends, and then the clients I get to serve, we're talking about the epistemology of love. So epistemology is a new word to me. I understand it as, how do humans know things, right? Broadly, it's a philosophy of how do you know things. And so that's what I'm trying to get at with heart set, mindset, skill sets in that order. We have way more ways to know things than just these big brains. By the way, we don't use our big brains enough, right? Often we're just reacting to a feeling. Oh, let me think about this. No, you're probably just feeling your way there, which is fine, but don't lie to me. And so the epistemology of love is this idea that, and I worked on vision, mission, and values with one of my clients. They're in Texas, and they had a vision, mission, value, identity statement track that was very boring, and you could cut and paste it and put it in other places. It wasn't serving them. They had 12 values. It was like, what's not on this value board, you know? Right. And so we started talking about love, and we defined it as an attitude of action done in someone else's best interest, done in such a way that that person would understand it as love. We read some poetry. I had them close their eyes, and we read a beautiful poem on love. And, you know, just trying to dream, like get to the unlock, use your imagination. We got to find a nugget here that most people are searching for, yet reticent to grab a hold of. So the senior team, anyway, comes up with this idea of love. We're at dinner that night, and one of their local competitors, big bank, was having a terrible conversion, down for 3 days. You know, and one of the ladies on the team is looking on Facebook, and these people are getting savage. The other bank is getting savage, right? Facebook is murderous. And she's like, here we are talking about love, and these people go to our church. They're some of our members. You know, what are we going to do? Anyway, they decide to spend $400, the senior team, and they're going to deliver donuts to the 30 branches the next day to this other bank. And one of them said, oh, we should do some social media. And the only thing I said was, I said 2 things. The lady kind of whispered, this isn't right. And I was like, enter this into the conversation. Like, I encouraged her. And then 2, nobody bring a phone. Don't do it for that reason. Just go in there and be human and deliver those donuts. And they did it. CEO too, roll in there. And it was like floods of tears across this whole staff. And of course, the other staff was like, let's take a selfie. And the other branch, the bank branch staff was like, who are you credit union freaks? Why are you in my branch? Because my leaders, the people who give me paychecks, have not been down here. And this is day 4 for me.
Wow.
Like, boom, baby. It was such an honor to be there for it.
That's amazing.
And it's this thing that we're trying to get at here is, how do we love one another in a way that you would recognize it? Those people recognize donuts are a love language, you know? And the behavior, and so we ended up installing this as their vision, mission, and values. So now their vision is, we want to be people that love people into sustained financial prosperity. We want to be people, AKA not robots. We are not robots.
Amen.
That love people. And then, we define that love and then into sustained financial prosperity. So we're in the final workshop. We're trying to rally everybody, right? I'm hosting the room, and that's like definitely my gifting lane. I love that, where it's not clear, but we're heading in the right direction. And there's a woman who ran collections. Kind of, I'm going to stereotype what she was. She's kind of cranky and she's just not the warmest human being you've ever met. So she stands up and I'm like, oh Lord, here we go. She's going to ruin this. She's going to torpedo this whole thing. Because the room is really rebelling on this idea of love. Too intimate, too this. And she stood up and she's like, y'all, before I came to this meeting, and by the way, I don't even know what this meeting was about, but before I came in this meeting, I just got off a guy. I repoed his car 2 weeks ago. You know why I called him? I was calling to see how he is because I love him. I didn't know him, but this is how I do my job. We love our people. We are not cookie cutter. She gave a big speech. And I was like, oh, baby, this is going to work. It's good. They grabbed a hold of it because it's universally true. If you put some language to it and you can get a group of human beings to rally towards it and make it their own, again, an honor to be there for it.
Yeah.
And they were having good results, but the joy and the exponential results after that were like tremendous. They're treating their vendors differently, because of all that. It's awesome.
Well, it all comes back to, and the Greeks write about the different 5 levels of love. You've got,
Yep.
the 5 love languages. And in this particular case, it's truly an act of service. I think about St. Thomas Aquinas and his whole perspective on love is to will the good of another human being. I mean, this is so practical here that it really just sums up everything that we've been talking about. Coming all the way back to meaning. The meaning is the mission, and they have meaning. In this particular example, they have meaning that far surpasses the present moment. And as we start to wrap up here today, Mike, what is one thing that someone who is watching or listening can do right now, something small, just to begin to make progress towards making the meaning, the mission, and everything they do, whether they're, at an individual level, a team level, or a corporate organization level? What's one small thing that they can do right now today?
Great question. I think to pause and consider, and what I want to say, pause, take off your iWatch and throw your phone in the other room and just sit. Maybe set your timer for 25 minutes and just sit and ask yourself this question. Is the way I work working? And how do I know? What evidence of that could I consider? And just see what comes of that. And I think when we can get quiet and, I believe in the power of prayer, like you can just, that is in each one of us. And to talk about the roadblocks, I think in our industry in particular, it is so tenured that a lot of people don't ask or want these kind of questions asked because I think they're afraid. I picked the wrong industry and I've been in here for 17 years and I actually hate my job, but I got these kids that I need to pay for college. So they don't want, and I have a tremendous amount of compassion for them. And so, but you get one life, you get one go.
Yeah.
So how do you want to serve? How do you want to be? I think I've been called to my position in line, some of which I understand and some of which I am called to adventure. And I am wanting to be ready. I'm 51 years old and I'm ready to go. Like in so many more ways, I'm like more joy, more suffering, more like it's just, and it's deepened and I'm able to get through the muddle a little bit better because I've asked that question. And then I have people in my life that are willing to, in many ways, show me, hey, what you're doing there is not working. Don't do that. And we have permission to speak to one another. I met with a group of guys this morning. There's 12 of us, and that's what we're doing. And it's loving and real. And they don't get it all right, and I don't get it all right. But it's like the muddy mix is a tremendous gift, and it's what's on offer. And, you know, to normalize things that are not normal is also a head fake. And so just ask yourself, is the way I work working? And how do I know? And you don't have to go put that on social media. And, you know, you'll find 1,000 people on social media to tell you that you're a loser. You're not a loser. You have a problem. And so once you come out with that, then you can start to work on it.
Yeah.
You know, there's no reason to be afraid of it. You just got to get it out. And then find people you trust and work on your game.
I want to give a little bit of additional perspective to that. And I love the question to just pause and ponder on a bit, because the unexamined life is not worth living, at least according to Socrates. And my wife and I, we were just talking about this the other day on a walk. I was like, how many people like just really pause and just ponder things about where they've been, where they're at, and where they could go next? And I will tell you, I know 3 senior level SVP CMO marketing leaders that I have personally worked with and have coached over the years that realized that they were not in the right place. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? You're wasting your time, and you're wasting the time of everyone else. And it was almost the freedom to share that with someone and then to get that perspective back. They ended up graduating, even out of the industry in some cases. But is the way that you're working? And to even deepen that question further, where can someone pick up a copy of your book, Meaning is the Mission, Mike?
On Amazon's the easiest place. Paperback and hardback are available. And I had coffee with a friend of mine that one of the people who inspired me to write the book, and I went in and she had me sign her book, which was total hoot and a delight and such an honor. And she was flipping through it, and it was highlighted. She had highlighted the book, and I was like, "Well, wait a minute, you highlighted?" She's like, "Yeah, I love sections of this." And that's my love. Like when I have a good book, I'm writing in there and arguing it. It's my love language.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Pam, you wrote in my book?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's great." And so I hope it's the kind of book. I love the paperback. I want you to stick it in your back pocket, argue with it. It's intimate and personal and for you. And if it helps you, I'm thrilled. I'd love to know, by the way. And if you hated it, you know, give it to your enemy.
You're still loving them. I love that, Mike. Mike, this has been such a pleasure. It's been such an honor to share this time and experience with you today. I really appreciate you joining me for another episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
James Robert Lay, I want to say thank you. You're doing important work. I love the meaning in your mission. Thank you for having me on. You're a champion, and I'm cheering for you all the way.
Thanks so much, Mike. As always, and until next time, be well, do good, be the light.